Hello there, dear listener. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. Before we start the actual episode, I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer and apologize because as we are learning how to record this remotely and everything that comes with putting out a podcast that I've never done before, I realized that sometimes mistakes happen. So you'll notice that my audio on this episode of the podcast is not very great. It is, I did not select the right microphone apparently, and somehow didn't realize that. So the audio you're hearing will be coming from my laptop instead of the actual microphone that I'm talking into if you're watching on the video. So I'm sorry for that, but I hope it doesn't hinder the experience at all. And I hope that you enjoyed the conversation regardless. Thank you again for listening and enjoy. I'm Harrison.
And I'm Ameer, and we believe that one of life's most valuable assets is the gift of conversation.
In the midst of life, sometimes we forget the true power of a deep, meaningful conversation.
So take a breath, come join us,
and let's talk about life.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Let's Talk About Life podcast. My name's Harrison King.
And my name's Ameer.
There it is. And we're here to talk about relationships today because yesterday was Valentine's Day when we're recording this. I don't know when it's coming out, but, it's Love Day, Relationship Day, I guess. And we're going to talk about relationships. So let's do it. First of all, very grateful for our relationship, Ameer.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Super grateful for you, dude. We got the best we got the best bromance going on. It's awesome.
It's true. I don't know specifically what to start with. I mean, it's such a broad thing. I was thinking about this a little bit, if I can start, maybe. I think there's categories of relationships, right? So there's number one, your relationship with yourself. Number two, we'll say relationship with, say, family members. You've got maybe intimate romantic relationships. And then you've got like a friendship kind of thing with other people. And then after that, I would say like just kind of acquaintances or peers or that kind of thing. And that's what I was thinking when I was thinking about this, kind of grouping them into that. So let's start somewhere. I don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
But,
yeah, totally. I think it starts off with like defining like our conversation today. It's not just talking about intimate relationships, although of course, that's going to be something really important to talk about, but rather we're going to, talk about the full spectrum of relationships, like family, friends, acquaintances, even professional relationships as well. I think any time in which you're relating to another person, I think is an opportunity for you to, I guess, shape who you are, who you present yourself to the world as, through your own choices. And so let's start off with let's start off with the low-hanging fruit, intimate relationships, since Valentine's Day was yesterday. How was your Valentine's Day? Did you guys do anything fun?
It's pretty good. She was busy in the evening, so we didn't really do anything together until later. But I think because of the way the day went, I was like realizing, to me it's important to like celebrate those big days, just because it's like a reason to celebrate. But I'm okay, even though we didn't really do anything big, because I feel like I try to bring that type of energy to the relationship regularly, and I think that's kind of important. So it's not just like, once a year we do something cool, right? Where it's like, I know you and Annie were talking on your Q&A video talking about like if things are, you got to keep the flame alive or whatever, right? You were talking about about like going on dates or whatever, and I think that's important. So anyway, it was good. It was a good day. How about you? Did you guys do anything virtually?
Not really. We didn't do anything virtually for Valentine's Day. Honestly, I mean, like between the two of us, we're not like crazy like. Well, actually, no. I stand corrected. Annie loves Christmas. She loves like holidays and like any excuse. But I feel like Christmas is the one exception. But when it comes to like Valentine's Day or like just other kind of celebratory days, it's like we're not so big on that. So it's not like we did anything like crazy big. But I think what it is not because like there's no not because there's no desire to do so, but because like that's the consistent state that we try to maintain anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
Like if your default setting, if the default mode of your relationship is to be fully engaged with one another and fully present and just like, keeping things fun and fresh, then truthfully Valentine's Day will then just be a normal day.
Right.
And that's kind of
Right.
the paradigm, at least, that I try to take. So no, we didn't really do anything special. We just kind of like, what did we do?
Yeah.
I think it was just a normal day, honestly. We didn't
There you
really do
go.
much.
That's fine though. What do you I don't know how deep we want to go onto this, but how
Hit me with everything, dude.
What's the biggest thing you've learned either from this relationship or just other relationships or viewing other relationships like I'm taking romantic relationships, right? What's the biggest thing you've learned recently, let's say in the last year?
That's a really good question. In the last
I'm sure there's a
year,
lot, but try to pick one, like big thing.
Oh, picking the one thing. I think here's one. And I think this does I learned this specifically in, intimate relationships, but of course, this applies to every, form of relationship. What I learned, and it's a very like tactical, practical thing. Tactical, practical. Basically, so are you familiar with the 5 love languages?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Why don't do you know them? Can you list them if
yes,
people
of course, yeah.
aren't familiar with this?
So listeners, the 5 love languages, it's basically a paradigm, a way of thinking about how we give and receive love. I forget who came up with it. There's a whole book about it. But basically, the 5 love languages are physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, and giving gifts. And we all have, a different, I guess, hierarchy of love languages. For me, my primary love languages are words of affirmation and physical touch. So damn, this pandemic's been hard. Without the physical touch. Yeah,
we're the same person, and
I
will never understand
really?
Why we're so similar.
No way.
Those are both mine.
Oh my god.
Anyway, moving on.
Oh my gosh. Why am I not surprised is the question. Oh my goodness. We're going to have to go back to our birth chart, like our birth certificates, make sure that we weren't actually taken out of a cloning facility. Yeah, exactly. Like separated at birth. But yeah, what do you mean? We look so alike, dude. Like, Anyways, so right. So that's the 5 love languages right there. What I learned that has been like really helpful, and this has also actually massively improved my relationship with myself, how the way that we give and receive love are also the primary ways in which we get hurt. And the primary ways in which we hurt ourselves. So for example, if your primary love language is words of affirmation, your internal self-talk, if you're not loving yourself, right, your internal self-talk is like, oh my gosh, you're so bad. You're the right negative self-talk, right? If your love language is perhaps, quality time, then you will spend that time like distracted and like, not spending quality time kind of with yourself. But then the flip side of that is that if you like can love on yourself, if you can love on yourself like based on your own love languages, so knowing for me that's words of affirmation, so actually saying my affirmations as like as hokey as 21st century like social media is going to make them out to be, if you can love on yourself in that way, or even with physical touch, like I don't know, giving yourself like a spa day, or like applying lotion, or just like holding yourself with love, like that in turn creates kind of a full reservoir for you to give love from. I think that connects to the other most important thing that I've learned about love. But I think, ultimately it does start with your relationship with yourself. And so loving on yourself based on your own love languages, I think is the best way to have that full cup to give to others.
And what if somebody doesn't know what their language is?
Well, you can go online and take the quiz. Just kidding.
Yes, there's a quiz. Though,
there is a quiz, but you can like just journal about it, your own introspection. How do you like people giving you love? Do you like getting gifts? For me, I'm not a huge gift person, right? Do you like acts of service, what do you do when you love someone, essentially? Like what's your default mode? And obviously, it's not like a clear, like divided and like partitioned thing. It's like it's a spectrum. There's always ebb and flow, context, everything changes, but it's a nice framework. It's a handy tool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's something
that's what I learned.
I I'd heard of it before, but never really thought of like what it was or how to implement it or anything. But when I started to, because Maria and I have very different ones, so this was like a challenge for me, because I had to realize that I have to try to understand this other kind of. I mean, it really is a language, right? Like it's something. If you don't kind of understand it and you haven't learned to quote unquote speak it, right? Like you have to figure that out, and that was a tough thing, and it still is. It continues to be a challenging thing, but I have to try to like remember that. It's like we were talking about perspective and like try to put yourself in other people's shoes and listening and that kind of thing, right? Last time, it's the same deal, where it's like you've got to really try to understand. Maybe if they're reacting a certain way, it's because they're feeling not loved, or then this again applies to like basically any relationship. Like I'm sure people react in these ways because of that, generally, like just as a generalization. But being aware of that and trying to think about it and like act from that place where I'm like, oh, okay, I need to maybe do this a little different, or do this thing that I might be like, yeah, I would love this to happen, but if I do it, it doesn't matter to her, right? So that's been a big realization for me, trying to like just be aware of it and think about it, right? Because it makes a lot of sense. It seems like one of those things where it's like some guy wrote a book and was like trying to make some money and was like, this is the answer, but it actually makes a lot of sense, and like it's pretty like accurate, I would say, from personal experience.
Yeah, let me ask you the same question. What would you say is the biggest piece of, well, one of the main things, that you learned about relationships over the last year that has helped you the most?
When I think of the last year, I always just like, whatever, we're in 2022 now, but I always like feel like 2020 was part of the last year. Like I lump the whole thing.
Yeah, same.
You know what I mean? What are we? Yeah, I would still have the same answer. I think patience. I learned just in general the importance of patience and trying to understand somebody else's perspective, like I just said, and with many people in my life, like just different views, different ways of reacting to things, just different, period, right? And having to try to understand it because I do care about them, and like not understanding it, but having to really be patient, like waiting to kind of us both get to the same place, and that kind of stuff. I think that's it. Like learning how to implement patience and do it. Man, I'm not patient. I'm not like innately just a patient person. I'm like, I want it to happen now, right? And if it doesn't happen now, like the internet sometimes is like slow. I mean, most people get mad, but like it's like doesn't work, and I'm like, what am I paying for?
Yeah.
Why is it not working?
Yeah, slow internet is worse than no internet.
Yeah, true. Actually, that's a good. Hey, look at that quote of the day. Not related, but quote of the day. So that's it. I think patience and that, and yeah, just I guess you have to choose. You have to choose how to care for and love people in your life. It doesn't just happen, and if you're not putting effort into it, like it's a big part of it, and it makes sense. But I've never really focused on that, and I think probably relationships and friendships and stuff have suffered in the past because of that. So trying to be aware of it, and it's all just a learning process, and I'm still working on it. But that's the big thing. Again, would be patience, I think. I don't know if that is a legitimate answer, but that's what I
totally hear you. Yeah, no, me too. Like patience is like the biggest thing you learn. I'd say, yeah, same in many regards. That's also a huge thing that I learned. Basically having patience, like like as a teacher, like I generally think that I'm pretty patient because I put up with some I put up with some,
Right.
you know,
Right.
like hair ripping inducing things, you know, in my lesson. So I think like my patience has kind of been like strengthened, but I totally hear you like in regards to like understanding. I think in full honesty, like I'll say it very very, you know, very honestly. I feel like, you know, there's always, as Sigmund Freud says, there's always the shadow self, you know, not necessarily the best side of ourself that we want to put forward, the part that we obscure kind of from the world, but like, you know, the inner machinations of our brain that, you know, we're kind of, for better or for worse, we don't want to share. But for myself, I notice the same thing popping up in the sense that sometimes I can be really judgmental towards my loved ones because I think it's part and parcel to, wait, I do it like this, you know, like why can't you do it like that, you know? But I think the understanding that your partner is not you, I think that's one thing that I'm trying to internalize. Like you can't have the same expectations for them that you have for yourself. And that's the problem, because sometimes I have, well, not sometimes, you know me, I have really, really high expectations for myself. And sometimes if I'm not careful, I can end up projecting that onto my partner, onto my parents, maybe onto even my work colleagues or a friend, or, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I need to remember that it is like, it is not my responsibility to help everyone, to make everyone more like me, to, you know, like that's not my responsibility. And neither is that, you know, actually helping them. I think, yeah, just letting go of that judgment and allowing them to be as they are. I think, 4 words of advice from Eckhart Tolle that like kind of helped me like flip the switch on that and just like reach a place of understanding. And it's not in like an egoic way, but basically it's this: allow them their limitations.
Interesting.
Allow them their limitations, right? In regards to, oh, my parents don't understand this, they can't see my point of view, they don't understand, they don't communicate well. Allow them their limitations, right? Your partner, oh, they're, I don't know, they're not managing our money the way that you want them to, they're forgetting about this and that, they're not doing this. Allow them their limitations. You know, not saying that you can, you know, just accept whatever that they throw at you if it's toxic, you know, like everything has nuance, of course, but, you know, within reason, you know, finding that place first of acceptance and being able to accept the moment as it is, just allow them their limitations. You know, I feel like that's, if I were to sum it up, that would probably be one of the huge things that I learned this year.
That's a really, I like the way you described that in those 4 words. Allow them know their limitations. And you said something that I really agree with, that I really struggle with actually as well, is that your partner, not even just partner, I'm going to be more broad with a lot of this, whatever relationship you're talking about, they are not you. And it's challenging. It's challenging when that is the case, that they're not you, because that means that even if you're super similar, you know, you and I, so similar, you know, the longer our relationship goes on for, there's going to be things that bother me about what you do. And there's going to be things about me that bother you, right? Because we're not the same person. And regardless of how close you are, you're always going to, they're not you, which means there's something that they do that you don't like, or you don't agree with, or that you would do differently. Because if they were the exact same, then why do we don't need other people? Like, it'd just be one person on the planet. So it's a hard thing to, and I don't know how to, I just try to keep aware of it, but it's like, I can even think right now of situations where, like, I'm saying this, that I value it, and that I want to think like that, but then I instinctually just don't react that way. And I'm like, you're wrong because you're doing it this way. And I guess the reflection right now of like knowing that I'm doing that and I'm trying to be aware of it is the important thing, because you can't do it all the time. But it's a really hard thing to try to figure out, because we all want things to go our way, because that's all we've ever known. We only know our experience and what we've lived. So if somebody does something different, it's like really, really challenging to be like, yeah, I understand why you're doing it. It's like, no, like, why don't you just do it my way? I'm right,
Yeah,
you know? So being like remembering that, and like you're saying, allowing them to be their own person is a big thing. Not easy, but a big thing. Good point. Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah, it totally starts with awareness. Like to your point, if you can just be like aware of it, like it's gonna pop up, right? That's just the nature of the shadow self, right? The way that you can, better manage the shadow self is by bringing the light of your awareness to it, right? Like that's all you can really do, and then you're not caught off guard by it. It no longer surprises you, but you can deal with it, and you can equip yourself. Yeah, I totally hear you. Flipping the just moving on to another thing, like in regards to parents, and everything. I think here's the big question. I'm not sure how personal how personal you want to get and everything, but in what ways do you see? Yeah, well, I mean, like I can also start with this one as well. Just in terms of like personal questions and everything. But in what ways do you see your parents' relationship, or perhaps your parents' reflection of love, or what they taught you about love? How do you see that showing up in your either romantic relationships, in your relationships with your friends, in your relationships in general, right? How do you see your parents'
Yeah.
relationship and what they taught you reflected in all your other relationships?
I would say most of specifically that question is positive for me, and I'm very lucky for that. I I'm a dad. I'm sure they're listening because they listen to I think every single one of these. So what's up?
Hello.
I'm very grateful for the kind of role modeling I've had in my life. Yeah, let me give everybody and you a little insight onto this because perspective is important. Before I share, I want to say that none of this is meant to be like I'm better than you. I'm doing it. I have this perfect life or something. That's not at all the case. I recognize that I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky for what I have, and I know a lot of people don't, which is so I don't take it for granted. My grandparents, to start, both sets of my grandparents are alive, healthy, and they're best friends. Okay, which is very uncommon, right? Like lots of times, like in-laws don't like each other and that kind of thing. They go down to the States every winter and they live across the street from each other in a trailer park, and they're like best friends, like in every sense of the word. So my parents, they grew up with this community, and then they got together, and it's always been this thing. So and my family is so ridiculously supportive and loving and kind, and just like I do crazy things sometimes, and my parents have always been like, yeah, like do go for it. You can fill the house with fog if you want, like just crazy thing. So I grew up, all that to say, I grew up with this like model of a relationship that in my mind is almost like it was so great. And it has actually, if we wanted to talk about this, as far as how has it affected my relationships, made my relationships hard because I've seen such a great, representation of what is possible. What's this kind of, I don't want to say ideal because everything can always be better or whatever, but it's so beautiful what my family has. And coming from that place and knowing that that's very rare, that when I try to relate sometimes to other people, I actually can't, because I haven't had the struggles that other people have, and I'm really genuinely coming from this ridiculous place of privilege, right? Where this is experience that I know is few and far between, and I acknowledge that. So it's made it challenging to try to understand people when you're saying like they're not me. That's really hard for me. Not hard and like I'm complaining, just in like I really have to try to be aware of it, because I don't want to be like, well, like why on earth I can't understand it sometimes, and I think that's something. So it's gone the other way, and I'm not complaining that, I'm not saying it's a bad thing that my parents are amazing. It's just interesting to think that because I've had this beautiful role model situation, that it's like um, someone that may be in the opposite situation, there's almost this weird disconnect that I really have to work at, which actually is quite an amazing thing. Like personally, I feel like it's pushed me to grow and try to understand others, and because there is that disconnect, I've had to really work on it. But all that to say, I have a really healthy understanding of what a relationship romantically and a family relationship can be and maybe should be, which is why I like to talk about these things and like how people be better and whatever, because I know what is possible and I'm not even fully there. But does all that make any sense? And I hope I don't sound like an egotistical maniac or something, because that's not at all what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, but that's kind of where I've come from, and it's interesting. So I'd love to hear your side.
Oh, that's honestly lovely. I can't wait to meet your parents.
Yeah.
Also, hello, Mama and Papa King. Hello. Would love to meet them. Oh, that's fantastic. And I like, just to clarify, I'm sure everyone listening and I can agree, you do not sound like an egotistical maniac. You are like one of the most humble people. So don't even worry about it. You're all good. Yeah, I totally hear you. Yeah, in many ways, it can, like, I see it can make it hard to kind of relate to like people who have gone through like super, super intense struggle kind of in their relationships. Like I get that. And, I feel that as well. Not to necessarily the same extent, but like I personally have had like have had a pretty stable family life for the most part, and like things were good. So I'm grateful in a way that it's, there's still that layer of like kind of, I haven't experienced that, so I can't understand fully, but I will still empathize and listen, that kind of thing. Yeah. For myself, with my parents' relationship, so for context, I grew up and my dad wasn't around really. Like he visited like from time to time, and I think probably he visited more when I was a kid and stuff, and so I don't remember those kind of years. But then like once I was like 7 onwards, or like 9 onwards, like kind of during the formative years of my teenage experience, like I kind of didn't have my dad for that. Like I visited him like sometimes, and like I kind of saw him, but there was always kind of like a distance that I could never fully grasp. And so I'd say kind of like, okay, so I'll start off with the positive. I'd say my mom, most amazing most amazing woman in the galaxy. Honestly, she did the impossible, raising me as a single mother alone in Canada. Like she made it work, and she was able to put me through lessons. She was able to, she taught me what unconditional love is, and helped me, I guess, grow that secure attachment. We'll talk about this more later, but attachment styles and stuff, right? She helped me kind of develop this like secure home base, so that, like, to your point, like I can just do crazy things. Like that's kind of why I think I'm audacious to go for the things that I'm going for. Like I'm going to drop out of school. I'm going to go do YouTube. I'm going to go start my own business. I'm going to go like all these kinds of things that are absolutely audacious and unconventional, because I know, and I'm grateful for the fact that my mom will love me no matter what. I think that's kind of the secure attachment, which once again, I know that not everyone has that. And so, acknowledging the privilege there, and so that's the positive. I think that's what I got from my mom and I's relationship. So now when I go into any relationship, friends or romantic or anything, like I won't tolerate toxicity, because like my mom has shown me how good it can be. It's like I'm not afraid to like step out of something if it's not good. There's no longer that fear there. Like I don't need the other person, because it's like that secure attachment is always kind of there, so that's positive. On the flip side, I guess what I've learned the most from, so it's not a negative, but it's always a learning experience. I think that part comes from kind of my dad. And I'm not saying this in any disparaging way. I completely, like, as I get older, I understand the complications of the situation, and all that nuance. And like he wasn't allowed to come to Canada, and like like a whole bunch of drama and complexity. But kind of what I've gotten from that, and how that sometimes affects my relationships. Well, in the past it did. Then I went to therapy, unpacked it, and we're all good. But I guess it left me, like, as a adolescent, having kind of my dad far away, and like leaving and stuff. It kind of left me with a fear of abandonment, a fear of rejection and abandonment. So it's an interesting antithesis to kind of the secure attachment, like I can do anything. But then also on the flip side, you have the other side of, oh my gosh, if I do this, will they abandon me? it's kind of a weird polarity. But I'd say, you know, learning to heal from that has only just strengthened my own security kind of in myself. But when I was a teenager, oh my God, yeah, it was really, it was rough. You know, I was insecure. I was like, I remember, well, full disclosure, I'll say this. I'll say this. Everyone listening, we're best friends now. I'll share it all with you. This one time, this one kid, like I was what, 11, 12, and that was like really emotionally tumultuous because there was a lot of things going on in my life at the time. You know, I was already going to counseling by that time. This one kid on the playground at school, it was Father's Day, and this one kid, this one little sorry, I won't swear. He made fun of me for not having a dad on Father's Day. And so I gave him a concussion on the playground. Anyways, so like that was kind of the
whoa.
What he was. I understand. I'm not gonna lie. I still think he deserved it.
It sounds like it.
I don't regret anything. Obviously I got detention and everything. I don't regret anything. But I think like kind of that insecurity was kind of like what I had to heal from. As for how that reflects in my relationships nowadays, I think it only reflects the positive. You know, like I think because I was like once again, no bad blood towards my dad. I've completely forgiven him. I went to therapy and, you know, kind of sewn up all the wounds of the past, you know, talked to him and kind of like, you know, got his perspective. But I think the biggest thing that I learned from all that I take into all my relationships is forgiveness. You know, if I was able to forgive my father and forgive the situation and forgive, you know, all the different things that happened, if I was able to forgive that, then kind of like I can, you know, forgive anyone, you know. That's kind of what I got from it and what I learned.
Totally. Yeah. Well, it just seems apparent to me that regardless of your family situation, there's a learning that you can get because nothing's perfect, right? So, good or bad or whatever, you can learn something from your past or your, you know, childhood or situation. You know what I've realized recently? Was it Freud is the guy all about childhood, right? Isn't that his thing? Yeah. I'm not well versed in psychology. I took whatever, psychology 101, and that's it. But I've never understood fully the whole, like, you know, you do things that your parents did and like whatever psychological trauma from your childhood carries on to how you become as an adult and all that kind of stuff. I've never really fully understood it until recently. I still don't fully understand it, but I've started to like think about things in that way where it's like, oh, this may have happened. And I never thought it was like really a bad thing, but maybe it wasn't a bad thing. It just was a thing. And this is why I do this now. And it's interesting to really, really start thinking like that. That wasn't anything I would have ever thought about up until about this point, because I think there's a level of growth that needs to happen before you maybe get to those kind of things. And maybe that's just the exciting thing about personal growth, or just there'll be more and more things that you're realizing and noticing and whatever. But it's neat to think about, and not like you're saying, you're like forgiving, you know, your dad, or you don't need to be necessarily mad at what happened because you can't change it, but say, this is how it shaped me. Maybe I don't like it, so then I can change it, or just acknowledging that stuff and that awareness. So the awareness is a big thing in relationships, I think. And with, you know, how your relationships affect yourself. Now, you mentioned something interesting about you use the word toxic. I personally don't like using that word, but I'll use it because everybody knows what I'm talking about. You know, you don't put up with whatever toxic relationships or traits or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. The reason I don't like it is because it's kind of like a buzzword in social media.
Yeah.
People just use it for like out of context.
Twitter.
When we're talking about the actual thing, it is valid. But a lot of times people are like, I don't know, it'll be like one little thing which somebody messes up because everybody's not perfect, and they'll be like, they're toxic. You got to drop your toxic friends. Anyway, but I think there's a valid point to be made about that, where it's like sometimes you grow out of relationships or situations or whatever, and things don't serve you anymore. It doesn't mean maybe it is like quote unquote toxic, or there's things that aren't good for you. But thinking about it from that way, where it's like, this isn't serving me, I've maybe moved on, if you want to get into talking about resonant frequencies and that kind of stuff, right? Like you might literally just be on a different kind of level as far as like frequency goes and energy and that kind of stuff, you know, if you want to believe that. And you just need to release these relationships or whatever, and it happens. And it happens. And being okay with that is hard, because I don't want to be a bad person. I'm sure you don't want to be a bad person and be like, I want to be friends with everybody all the time forever. Right? And you can't, especially if, you know, we can have a lot of friends and stuff, but you need to be kind of curate, like you might curate your Instagram feed with who you follow. You have to curate your life with the friends that you have. And that's been something that's been on my mind a lot. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah, toxic is such a buzzword. It's like, he didn't pick me up from dinner tonight or pay for my meal. Toxic, you know, like
Right.
people
Yeah,
take it
yeah,
like
yeah.
completely out of, you know, like they magnify it too much. But I think kind of like the core idea, you know, like is there like genuine, actual like relational toxicity and all that kind of stuff. As for like, you know, like different like resonant frequencies, like who you vibe with, and just, you know, releasing relationships that no longer serve you, I'd say that's a skill. You know, it's a skill that grows over time. And to your point, you know, like none of us want to be the bad person. Like I don't want to be, you know, um I don't want to be the mean one. But I think it's not so much like fully releasing the relationship, but I think it's just about creating a sense of like just creating a healthy distance.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say like that's, in all honesty, I can be kind of like, when it comes to cutting out relationships that don't serve me, like if the person is like mean or negative or anything, like I'm ruthless when it comes to that. Like if they're like absolutely like, you know, just spewing just negativity all the time, and you know it's just not the same resonance, I feel perfectly comfortable just being like, okay, bye, you know, and simply just like not talking to them again. But I think, you know, obviously there's, you know, there's closer relationships, especially I think this applies most to friends from high school, you know, friends from high school, or perhaps
Yeah.
friends that you've grown up with. You know, eventually you guys like outgrow each other, right? And it's okay for there to be distance, right? But like it's okay if there's distance. At the end of the day, there's still a connection, there's still love, you know, no matter how far like the distance might be. Like I know for a fact, like I'm speaking about like one of my closest friends, it's my entire life. Like, you know, have we grown apart a little? Yes. But is there always that love there? For sure. Like if you were to come up to me and be like, hey, you know, like I need help with something, or you know, like, you know, whatever situation, like I know for a fact that we got each other.
For
And I
sure.
think, you know, creating healthy distance is important for both of you. Like if you're not resonating, if you're not vibing with one another, then it's serving neither of you. You know, it's not serving that person, it's not serving yourself. And so, you know, creating that healthy distance for from one another for yourselves is, you know, probably the healthiest thing you can do, as long as that's, you know, still bridged with love. Right.
And even like you're saying, you know, you cut off whatever the term you want to use, but like just say, hey, no more kind of thing. And I'm sure you're not doing it in like a, if they ever reach out to you or you see them, you're not going to be like, you know, super rude to them or whatever.
Yeah, of course,
right?
Of course, yeah.
Which is what I think I don't like about this whole toxic thing, is it seems like people are trying to treat it like, if they ever talk, like I'm never going to talk to them ever again, like silent treatment for life, you know, super sassy. No, I think it's just like you can make the conscious choice to say, I'm not going to put energy into this. But you don't need to be rude about it, I guess, you know, like you can let things kind of go without, you know, being rude about it. And I think that's important to be aware of like kind of taking a little, you know, going through taking inventory of the relationships in your life, or what are the things that are making you feel whatever way, and addressing it. Whether it's you need to put more energy into something or less energy into something, or whatever, but it should be like an important part of your life, you know, thinking about that. Because, and there are some where it's just like you're around people all the time and you maybe have to and kind of almost put up with them, but figure out a healthy way to do that, because sometimes there's things you can't control. But at least I think it's good to think about, but don't do it in like a bad menacing way where it's like that's all you do, and if somebody does one bad thing to you, you're like, no,
No.
Out of here, right? Like, get up.
Unacceptable behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, I hear you. You brought up a good point about taking inventory of your relationships. Here's an interesting question. Going back to our romantic relationships bit, you know, or actually even extending it. Well, I mean, I'll be specific. In terms of romantic relationships, taking inventory, kind of, of perhaps like dating history and everything. What has every relationship that you've ever been in taught you? Like, and the good, like, obviously, like, we're not here to talk bad about anyone, but what has the good, like, what good have you gotten from every relationship that you've been in?
Well,
Like,
I
what have
learned
you
a lot
learned?
about myself. Yeah, that's it. I think it's very general, but I think that's it, because like you said, what we were saying earlier, everybody's different, right? And that kind of thing. And then, like, reflecting on it now, it's like, this is why that wasn't working, or this is what bothered me about that, because there was something I needed to work on. And often that, I can't control what the other people are doing, like we said. So, I can go, well, this is how that would have maybe worked better, or whatever. That's it. So I think learning things that are, I don't want to say flaws, but, like, things that maybe I should work on, or places that I could better myself to have a better relationship. And I think that's why dating is a thing. Because if you want to, I'm not saying that it is, but if you want to look at marriage like the end goal kind of thing, if you want to, then dating teaches you all the things that you shouldn't do. So you eventually just weed out all the bad stuff, and you figure out what the good stuff is. And eventually, as everybody does it longer, you learn more, and then you'll meet someone that you've both learned a lot of these things. And then it's like, yeah, we've got the best of everything that we've ever learned. There's a lot of growth that's happened between your first relationship and if it's that last one. Now, that's not always the case. There's people that marry I have, friends, and their parents are, many friends and their parents are like high school sweethearts, like their first relationship, and they've been married for many, many years, and they're very happy. And to go along with that, I heard one time somebody say, and she goes, we've been married since whatever, I don't know who this was, random person, but we've been married since we were, or together since we were like 16 or something, right? We've been married for however many years. And she goes, but I've been with about 12 men, because he's changed so much. Same guy, not actually 12 different people, but she goes, it feels like I've been with 12 different people. And he would say the same thing, because we've perpetually been growing together and changing, and they've kind of almost done that, like I was just talking about, that dating thing throughout they've only been with one person, but they've figured out, okay, this is not working, so let's remove it and let's try something new, or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. So
Wow.
I kind of got really off from what I was originally saying, but learning to bring it back, if you want, learning about myself is the big thing, I think.
That's really interesting what you just said about the relationship. It's like you've been with different people but with the same one, and like that growing together, it's such a rare thing to find, to be able to perfectly grow with somebody, because there's so many variables at play. Like it's so easy, like it's so easy to grow together, it's so easy to grow apart as well, right? In the constant pursuit of growth, right? You could be intertwined for a period of time, but then sometimes things split off, and then you grow in different directions. And I think that's just, once again, that's just the nature of life. Like, no, well, I mean, yeah, it's like different things grow in different directions. If we're growing in the same direction, to be competing for the same sunlight, right? And sometimes different things come into your life at different points. I think, yeah, to your point also, and this is another, I guess, like Eckhart Tolleism, I guess, what I've learned about relationships is that at the end of the day, no relationship is permanent. No relationship is permanent.
Okay, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, there's always the possibility of, like, perhaps not like, a conscious choice of like a breakup or anything like that, but, like, knock on wood, like, there's always the possibility of, like, losing that person. And, at the end of the day, we're all going to die anyways, right? So at least, in my own personal view, I think every relationship is impermanent. And so I guess making the most of that and not taking the person for granted, I think that's what that kind of leads to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that what have you learned? Is that what you would say, that kind of thing, or like what's the biggest thing you've
yeah.
learned?
As for what I've learned, okay, well, let's go. Let's go. Well, I mean, the first relationship that was just kind of puppy love. It was grade 8. It is what it is.
Nice.
It is what it is. Too young. That's all I can say.
No, but it's a learning thing.
Mhm.
It's a learning
Yeah.
thing still.
Yeah.
I think, you
Okay,
know.
okay, sure. I get okay. If I were to think really hard, what did I learn from that?
He's laughing.
I learned
Okay, I thought this was gonna go a different direction, but
that's actually a little personal. I don't want that on the podcast.
no, it's all good. But anyway,
okay. I learned respect the other person, and like mutual respect is the baseline. Like it was puppy love. It lasted for like 42 days.
he knows too.
Yeah, exactly.
42 days.
Yeah, I literally broke up with them through text.
Classic, hey?
It was so immature. Anyways, like I'm like, just to be clear, I'm like friends with almost all of my exes anyways. Like, we're chill. We're on good terms, which is something I'm really grateful for. Second relationship, I learned how important, I guess, like listening, making sure that you're genuinely listening to the other person, because like they were dropping hints that, they wanted things to change. They were unhappy with stuff, but I was like kind of like oblivious to it, not listening. And so I learned to listen. Another thing I learned is how important family is. Once again, this was like grade 9, grade 10, like, once again, still too young, but I learned how important family is. And like, hiding and like trying to keep a secret, it doesn't work out in the long term. Next relationship, that was probably the most I call that one, like, colloquially, the drama and the trauma. That one was a whole boatload. It's like a dumpster caught on fire, a dumpster full of poop caught on fire and got thrown at a fan, and then got blown up by a warship.
Okay.
It was that one was a mess. I think what I learned from that one, the importance of family. Once again, like, you can't be sneaking around and like you can't be doing that stuff. You can't. That doesn't work out long term. Yeah, that doesn't work out long term. And oh yeah, actually, the most important thing I learned from that one is that when you're dating someone, or to your point, if we're thinking about marriage as the end goal, when you marry someone, you're not just marrying the person, but you're also marrying their family, right? And so it's about choosing, hey, what family do I want to integrate into my own? Do I want to integrate a family of dysfunction, or do I want to integrate it like a family of like stability? And not to say that someone coming from a dysfunctional family immediately rules them out, but like, that's an important thing to consider. It's like, those are going to be your in-laws, that's going to be those are the people that you're going to see at family dinners, and obviously not every family's perfect, of course, but it's about making that choice and finding the best that you can. And yeah, I think relationship history wise, like, that's kind of what I learned. And so that's why I guess I'm really glad that with Annie, at least, like, her family is like obviously, like, we have similar family situations, but her family loves me. There's no hiding, there's no more bad stuff happening. It's just it's surprising how easy it all kind of was, how it all kind of came together. And I was like, whoa, I'm not used to this. I'm used to running away and hiding and like bad things happening and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just easy. It's good. And of course, endless learning about myself and all the different things. But that's kind of the quick Spark Notes version of Ameer's relationship history.
I love it. You were saying interestingly, kind of disregarding the early relationships as being too young or whatever, which is maybe valid. But I look at those in my life and hearing what you said as a bit like the reason that you are so grateful for the family that you have in Annie's family is because of the things that happened before. If they had all been this way and you get to this point, you'd just be like, well, this is how it's supposed to be. You'd find something maybe wrong or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think even like the little tiny whatever relationships that you don't think matter or whatever, like all of that has shaped you. If you didn't have that, something would be different right now. So you know what I mean? So I think it's fun to think about it that way, where like
I wouldn't be doing music.
there you go.
I started writing songs after my first breakup. I was like,
See?
I need to write a song about this.
There we go. So but yeah, it's fun to think about, you know, or just to remember that these things are, I mean, there's good part. There obviously is bad things that can happen because of, you know, bad relationships, but they're all learning experiences for and opportunities for you, the other person, and mostly, like, I still think, yeah, about yourself, which you then bring that to somebody else because you're sharing yourself with somebody. They're not. It's not like the other way around, right? So, yeah, look at that.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, like you're essentially like sharing all your experiences also with someone as well. All the things that you've been through and kind of have learned and picked up as a result, like all the battle scars, all the learning experiences, like you are sharing that with someone else and finding someone who can like also like I guess understand, you know, and create space for those. You know, it's like yeah, to your point, it's like you're grateful for what you have because you see like kind of what it was like before. And I think that's the importance of experience, you know, the importance of like going out, trying things. And this applies to everything in life. You can only know like the fastest way to know what you want is to know what you don't want.
Yeah.
Right? That's the clearest path. And that's contingent upon experience, you know, and trying things, you know, relationships or in life, you know, different career paths or, hey, podcast. Oh, hey, let me do a YouTube channel. Hey, let me do this, you know, like all that kind of stuff. I think experience is super, super important.
If you choose to, you know, use it to learn and grow and whatever, right? Because it could just happen. And if you don't think anything about it, then it doesn't matter. Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Question:
Chad.
What are kind of like the, I guess, tactical practices that you use, like practical advice that people can perhaps take away that you use to help yourself maintain healthy relationships, you know, with your family, with your friends? You know, what are the tactical things that you actually do to maintain that kind of healthy baseline?
Well, my first answer would be the things I do to take care of myself.
Totally.
Like we've talked about previously many times, you know, meditating and that kind of stuff, which is like self-reflection, understanding myself, trying to understand myself better. All those things that we've talked about on many episodes of the podcast, all those things help me to have better relationships because I'm understanding myself better. And if you can understand yourself better, then you can start to, you know, sort through relationships and stuff like that. But I'm not sure, like when you say tactical, like things like just trying to really be aware of giving other people a space to be themselves, like you said, which is just, I guess, more of a thinking thing, but just like approaching stuff that way and letting there be a separation between you and the other person, because if you feel like those are starting to merge or like you're trying to take over them or whatever, like that's not going to work. So trying to practice having a healthy level of separation so that you can just understand that there's distance and what's going on, that whatever they're feeling is not like you're separate, you know what I mean, which I think is important. I don't know if that helps, if that makes any sense, but yeah. How about you? Do you have anything particularly?
Ooh, tactical things. Oh, I love this. I like that. But yeah, for sure. Like as you said, you know, it starts with awareness, you know, and I think an active way to cultivate that awareness is through journaling, through meditation, you know, introspection and self-reflection. You know, like journaling is probably the thing that has helped me, well, that and like meditation, you know, journaling and meditation have like, and reading as well, have, you know, probably been the practices that help keep myself grounded and help myself help me kind of navigate the internal the internal sludge, and get it all out and crystallized onto paper. I think exactly what you said. It starts with being able to take care of yourself, right? Cultivating a good relationship with yourself and loving on yourself in your based on your own love languages. So I think that's something that I try to cultivate for myself. Like, I will like affirm myself a lot, and I'll like, I'm not sure if you know, like, Mel Robbins' high five your heart technique thing. Whatever it is, it's like, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm good, I'm capable, I got this, like that kind of thing. Loving on yourself first. I think in relation to other people, perhaps important things, creating space and just asking questions. Like 9 times out of 10, people don't want you to give them advice, people just want to be heard, right? And so asking questions, like mirroring, like just showing them that you understand. Like oftentimes when people come up to you, they're not asking for advice, they just want to like know that someone hears them. And so like, instead, what I've been like practically doing is that instead of giving advice when someone rants to me, I'll just be like, oh, I hear that this does this because, like mirroring what they told me, but in my own words, just to demonstrate that, I'm listening and I understand. And oftentimes they will draw their own insights from that. Like after hearing what they said, told back to them in a different way, they will draw insights from that.
For sure.
In and of it themselves. And like, it's oftentimes a lot more powerful than you just telling them, to do something. I think also, practically making sure that you're checking in on people, making sure that you're checking in. You do a really good job of this, honestly. You do a really, really good job of this. And so like that has inspired me also to do a better job of that. Sometimes I get like so busy that I don't, but I literally like set a recurring thing in my to-do list to check up on my friends. Like, and I have a different friend for each day of the week that I try to check in on. And, like that might not work for some people. It might seem like, oh my God, it's a chore. But, for me, it's more so a reminder. It's like, oh yes, I get to check it off my to-do list that I checked up on them, like I enjoy that for myself personally. So that's what I do. And like, I guess just, it comes down to listening, like asking, and this is specifically in the context of romantic relationships, but asking, how do you feel about us? Having like weekly check-ins, essentially. That's something that Eddie and I do. We're like, hey, how are you feeling about us? Oh, I'm feeling a little, bored. It's been a little while. We've been doing a lot of work. Okay, sure. Let's fix that. Let's go out on a date. Or, oh, I've been feeling great, but I anticipate that we might be chilling out in the next 2 weeks or so. It's like, okay, cool. We can anticipate that. And I think it's just opening up the communication, opening up the understanding.
Yeah. Wow. You got a lot of good things.
So yeah, I hope that helps all the viewers. Oh my God, practical resources. Oh my God. I can go on about practical resources. Are there any books or videos or like things that you've watched that have really helped you with your relationships? Like, share it with the people, any info or references?
No specific things, to be honest. Just like a large part of it is, like I said, just the role modeling that I've had, what I've been able to witness, and witness in other people's lives that I'm like, nope, like I don't want that. But I don't, not really off the top of my head. Like I think just a lot of it is experience that I've done, but I'm sure you do, Mr. Encyclopedia. So tell me.
Excited. Yeah, did someone ask me for books, resources?
Yeah, I know, this guy.
Oh, that's my favorite thing. If you're looking for good books to read on relationships, the book that has helped me the most with my relationships is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. It is so simple. It is such a quick read. I mentioned it in my like 5 books that changed my life video on YouTube and stuff, but it is so good for relationships. It's basically 4 pieces of really simple Toltec wisdom that, if applied, have a profound impact on your life. I won't spoil it, but one of them is, I'll spoil one of them. Don't take anything personally. Nothing that others say or do to you is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. It has nothing to do with you, right? So whether or not someone says, I love you or I hate you, has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the image of you that they have in their head, which ultimately you are not responsible for, right? So yeah, that's a good one. I'd also say, I'd also say The Mastery of Love, also by Don Miguel Ruiz. That's a really, really good book that it's a little bit more in depth on that topic. That one's a good one. I think also, what's another one? Okay, actually, yeah, for any of the viewers who perhaps like, didn't have a relationship with their father or are perhaps trying to mend that relationship, a really good book for that my therapist actually gave to me is The Prince and the King. Let me get the author. The Prince and the King by Michael Gurian. It's this book right here. This book right here. Yeah, it really helped me kind of just like navigate my own internal like relationship with my father, and it uses kind of archetypal psychology to help bring you into a place of wholeness and healing. I'd say another really good place is the Gottman Institute. John Gottman is like the leading scientist, the leading person who has studied relationships, and he has like all the data, everything. And so he kind of summed it up kind of in all of his relationship theories and advice and statistics and everything. It's a super science-based approach to it. Again, the 5 Love Languages book that we mentioned before. Also the book on attachment styles as well. I feel like such a human encyclopedia.
No, it's good. It's good.
Such a nerd.
It's awesome.
Yeah, the book on like attachment styles. I think we like skimmed on this very briefly.
Yeah, we can
but
come
that's
back to
also
another
something,
day.
that's also something important kind of to figure out. Ultimately, I think, in closing it out, I think, when it comes to relationships can either be the biggest source of joy or the biggest source of strife. And so it's important to, get this down, which is why, I guess I've like committed so much time to like reading these books and like figuring it out, because, like ultimately how good your relationships are ultimately comes down to a choice. Like you can either choose to have healthy, vibrant relationships, or you can choose the alternative. And ultimately the choice is up to you.
Look at this. See, so poetic all the time. That's what I'm saying.
I'm writing a YouTube script in my head.
I know. Yeah, you are. Where can the people find you, Ameer?
You can find me at Ameer Corro, AMEER CORRO, everywhere that you find people. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the good. What about you, Harrison?
Harrison King Official on Instagram and YouTube. You can check that out. And HarrisonKingOfficial.com if you want to check out more stuff with the podcast and other things. We will see you next time. I don't know what we're talking about, but it's going to be good. Remember to keep loving life, and we'll chat with you next time.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to support the show, make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Visit us on Instagram and TikTok at Let's Talk About Life Pod. And for more information, head on over to HarrisonKingOfficial.com/podcast. Now it's time for you to get out there and have a deep, meaningful conversation in your own life.